I'm a fatty and you can call me fatty, but no matter what you want to call me, welcome back to my Astroneer Megabase tutorial series. In this episode, we're taking an in-depth look at the heart of the Megabase, my train depot. First, I'll walk you through my vision for this, the problems I had to overcome, and how I decided to solve those problems. Next, I'll walk you through setting up a train station as well as my super high-tech buffer system. Then I'll show you how I move the resources from the buffer onto the different trains within the base, and then finally we will go over each of the logic pieces that I have here and show it all in action. In the first two episodes, we set up the power and sortation systems as well as the printer room. To be honest, it's been a bit painful for me because I didn't really have my resource gathering automated yet, and it takes a lot of material, so I spent way too much time scooping dirt and scrapping lights to fund this project. So I am so excited to finally feel like the whole project is coming together. But without further ado, let's get into it. My whole philosophy on the Megabase is to put in all the effort now so I can mess around later. With the new DLC on the horizon, I want to automate everything. In the last episode, I showed you one rail randomly on the side of the wall. This is it. There are going to be two trains inside our Megabase, the storage train and the chem train. The storage train will span all three floors. It starts on the chem floor, then it passes through the train depot, and then it ends here on the storage floor. The chem train starts on the train floor and just ping-pongs between here and the chem floor to supply all of our chem stations with the things they need to craft everything. The most obvious issue with this whole setup is that if one storage fills on the bottom floor, that will make that resource flood the belt, block out everything else, and it will fill up all the train stations and make all of this automation pointless because everything is only as strong as its weakest link. This is also why I have it split out into 10 different train stations. I want to be able to turn a station off without disabling anything else. Another thing is that with only one station in a dendritic setup, all of the trains would be delayed by any other train because only one can be on the main branch at once. So, 10 stations, 10 possible resources, easily separated and not interdependent. Now to address the blockages. Each resource canister in the sortation system has a sensor on top set to full, not full. I've consolidated these signals to this board here. So once a resource canister is full, the signal comes here and out to the auto arm that adds to the storage belt. With all this combined, we have a flexible network that adjusts to the resource fluctuations and still keeps the pace with high volume loads. It also, with these train stations, allows for potential flexibility with the coming DLC, especially with the interplanetary automation. It looks like it was fed from a rail line, so that could potentially be a way to even if we don't go out to a resource node itself, we could have a rocket station that feeds that rail right up into the base, and there's not really any changes we have to make to accommodate that. Before we get into the train depot, I'm going to walk you through setting up a satellite station just in case there are any questions on how I did this. What you'll need is a train station, 3 delay repeaters, a medium platform, an auto arm, or a couple of them depending on how far out your auto extractor is, and then the auto extractor. Also, it would be a good idea to bring some medium storages just for your station. I don't see a need for anything more because personally, I'm only running one auto extractor, so there's no way it's going to fill 2 medium storages before the train comes back. Once you place your station, put the medium platforms on the station, and then place your auto extractor if you haven't already. Next, we overclock the extractor. For those that aren't aware, overclocking your auto extractor is basically just using the delay repeaters to turn the auto extractor off right after its down animation when it extracts resources, and then turning it off again to skip its up animation and then turning it back on. I don't know the exact math, but it's around double the speed overall. To overclock, you'll take a delay repeater set to 3, set it on top of a delay repeater set to 5, you'll pin it here, put it back into the 5, and then branch it over to the auto extractor. Now, set up your auto arm and don't forget to plug everything in. Perfect. Now, all we have left is to trigger the auto extractor overclock and then set up the train return. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this delay repeater over and set it on the ground right here. Then we'll grab this pin from this rail post. By the way, you want to make sure that this rail post is far enough that the train can pass the post. It can't be sitting on the post, or sometimes it'll cause issues with it not heading back. So just make sure that that is functioning correctly. And then you'll pin it here, and then into the delay repeater. Set this delay repeater to 25. And then this is going to go in this little pinhole here in the direction that you want it to go. So we want it to go back that direction, so we'll set it on the left side. Now, a quick trick here is with this other one, we're going to pin it here, here, and then into this bottom delay repeater here. And what we're going to do is we're going to use calling the train to set the cycle to start. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that you pick up this segment pin here before the train passes the rail post again, because if it hits twice, then that'll mess up the delay on the delay repeaters, but that's not really much of an issue. This just makes it so that you don't have to bring a button repeater with you. Now, let's call the train, and once it gets down here, we'll pull this pin, and the station should be good to go. All right, here it comes. We have our trigger, and there we go. Train has been sent back to the start, and our auto extractor is now working like a charm. So let's turn these auto arms on, and we are good to go. All right, now that we've got that handled, let's go ahead and talk about our buffer system. So what we've got here is when a train comes in, it's obviously going to drop its resources here. And then what I'm using is an extended XL platform. So what this allows is we have the auto arm here to place into the canister. Now, if you don't know this, canisters won't automatically pick up resources if they're in the output mode. However, if you or an auto arm places a resource nugget onto the canister, it will go in regardless of what mode it's in. So what we're doing here is we're taking advantage of this mechanic to make sure that the auto arm will place into here, and then it will then output onto the end of this platform. So worst case scenario, if everything is full, then nothing will be pulled from here, and it'll just buffer here. So we can hold 450 resource nuggets plus what the train can hold and the train stations out at the satellite locations. So one thing I did want to also mention is that some of these resources need to be smelted. Now, if we put the smelters at the train stations at the satellite locations, when the train goes to pick up those resources, it will pick up the portal smelters as well, which obviously is not what we want. So we're going to put them here at the end, and then we just have a resource nugget in the auto arm picking stuff up so that it will only pick up the completed resource. Now, some of you may be thinking that there is one resource that is usable in its raw form as well as its smelted form, and you would be correct, and that would be quartz. Quartz, glass, all of that's viable, as well as quartz being used in the chem lab. So we'll talk about this setup a little bit later, but first we're going to talk about what kind of belt system we've got going on here so that it makes a little more sense. As I mentioned before, one of the key problems that I wanted to solve with this 10 station setup is the issues with clogging that interdependence creates. The way that I'm trying to solve this is with this 2 auto arm setup here. Now I've got one that is set up to pull resources off, and it's locked to that specific resource, and then it will place right behind it. This belt here, these empty medium platforms right next to the XL extended, are our storage train belt. And then, of course, these auto arms that are unfiltered are just going to move everything along in that direction. Because it's set up like this, all I have to do once a resource is filled up is turn off that auto arm, and then we'll no longer be adding those resources to the storage system to clog anything up. So that way we can turn off targeted resources, and we don't really have an issue with the differences in flow or anything like that. Behind us, we have this final belt here. This belt is going to be taking things over to the chem station. So all of the resources that need to go to the chem lab are going to be pulled in, and then they're going to come to this central point here, placed on the train, and then this train is going to go around and up to the next floor. Now, one thing I did want to mention is that zinc and ceramic are the only 2 resources on Silva that do not have a use once they're crafted. So those ones we don't really need to add to this belt, so I just have this arm turned off. And I actually don't have ceramic set up yet. I'm going to do that once I find a fitting node. But the idea is everything just goes down this belt here and feeds over to the train station, which will take everything up to the chem floor, and from there we craft. All right, now real quick, we're going to talk about this setup with the quartz. Now, as you can see, we have quartz spitting out here, and we're not refining it into glass just yet. So we have this auto arm, which is the same as all the others, that is going to induct it into our storage train conveyor belt, if you will. Then we have this one. This one is pulling resources out to the medium storage for the chem lab. Now, what I'm trying to do here is to use the smelting time to filter out glass. Now, if it was running really slow, hypothetically, you could never get quartz. But if that is an issue that I'm having, I just need to go out and reset the auto extractor so that it'll keep going. But as you can see, I've had this belt turned off, so we've got a good 267 quartz. Now, just to show you how this works, I've got quartz. So this is the only filtered auto arm. So the quartz is the only thing that has to be on the end because it's filtered on the chem lab belt. All these other arms are unfiltered, so they'll just pick up whatever it throws at them. But this one specifically can only take quartz because we don't want it to take our smelting furnaces, and obviously we also don't want it to take our glass. So if I turn this on real quick, you'll see it throws it onto the smelting furnace. The furnace is going to smelt the glass, and then anything excess during that 15-second smelt time is going to be passed down the chem train. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off again. But also, as you can see, we've got our glass arm, which is sending those glass resource nuggets over to our supply train, and then those are just going to go right down the line over to our storage station, and we're good. Now, if you wanted to, you could always just remove a portable smelting furnace if you wanted to make a little less glass, or if you wanted to remove all of them, that would be fine too. All right, now for the logic portion of this video. There is a little bit of advanced logic that we could get into, but I'm going to save that for the chem lab video, as that is the only real difficult portion. So I'm going to save that for the chem lab portion, and then we'll talk about it a little more in depth then. But what we have here is, I'm gonna drill down real quick just so you can see what's going on under here. Under the floor here, we have these storage sensors that are sitting on top of each of the canisters in our sortation system, and they just feed in here, and each of these sensors is set to full, not full. Now, what that's going to do is, once the canister hits full, the signal is going to come over here, turn the light on, and also send a pulse to the delay repeater. And then that delay repeater is going to turn off the auto arm, pulling that into the storage system. For instance, we have compound here, so once that fills up, it'll send a pulse down here. We'll turn this auto arm off, and then no more compound will be added to our storage network. Now, you will see that this auto arm here is not set up off of this system because this is feeding into the chem station. So remember, we want this to keep going so we can make our plastic and things like that, right? So all of our resources are still going to the chem lab, but they're not going to be inducted into the storage system. As I said, we will go over the finer logic for these arms in the next video. Now, the one final thing that I do want to take a look at, just because it's a little weird, is once again the quartz. Now, as we talked about, this all works together, and the smelters are just filtering things out by way of their smelting speed. Now, to get around the issue of clogging up this particular storage with glass, should we fill up on glass for our chem train, we just have this branched right here. So it turns off the smelters, and it also turns off the auto arm. So it'll turn off everything relating to glass production all at once, so we don't have to worry about the smelting. Sometimes there will be nuggets on there. That's fine. They'll just keep smelting once we fire it back up. Okay, I forgot about this, but the last thing that I wanted to talk about is the train logic. Now, this is pretty simple. We're taking this pin from the rail post, dropping it here, into the delay repeater, and then across to the opposite end, so that if the train comes from this side, the train will continue out this way, and then if it comes from this side, it'll continue on that way. So it's just going to go right on through the station once it picks up everything it needs to, and that'll be it. Okay, so as you can see, we've got our quartz is smelting into glass just fine. Everything else is moving along. The only issue here is that we do have a bit of a hang up here at the front because I had this turned off for over an hour while I was making clips and all that stuff. We got a pretty good stash, but as you can see, it's all working here. It's pulling everything excess out here, so we've got that belt running over to the storage train, and then this outer belt here is moving the resources along over to our chem train station. Well, folks, I hope that you enjoyed this video. As I said, we do have one final video coming up for the chem floor, and then I believe after that, that should be everything. And then, of course, I will do a show and tell, if you will, of the final build. I'll show you all the fun stuff I've been working on behind the scenes. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope that it gives you some kind of inspiration for your builds, or just, you know, gives you some ideas for different things that you could try out or mess around with. And I hope you guys are all excited for the DLC. If you got any questions or anything like that, feel free to drop a comment. If you like the video, go ahead and like it. And if you want to see more of this, go ahead and subscribe. Also, real quick, I forgot to say this. I do have a Discord. It's not very big right now, but if you want to be a part of that Discord, the link will be in the description. I hope you have a wonderful day, and as always, be safe.